Curious had been hunting for most of her life. She was born into it, trained for it, and lived for it. Among the Valkyrie people, she was legend. Other hunters whispered her name with respect and fear. Her silver scales caught the light of a dozen different suns as she moved through the galaxy, always tracking, always watching, always one step behind her prey until the moment she wasn't. This job seemed simple enough. A human named Jake Foster had allegedly stolen something important from the Galactic Council. The details were classified, but Curious didn't need details. She needed results. She had tracked him across 3 different star systems already, learning his patterns, studying his movements, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Now she was on Hyperion 7, a massive trading station that floated in neutral space. Thousands of species came here to buy, sell, and trade. It was crowded, noisy, and chaotic. Perfect place for someone to hide. But Curious was patient. She had positioned herself on an upper platform overlooking the main market, her advanced visor tracking heat signatures and movement patterns through the sea of bodies below. Humans were supposed to be easy targets. Everyone in the galaxy knew this. They came from Earth, a planet so dangerous that most species wouldn't dare visit it. Predators everywhere, extreme weather, deadly diseases. Yet somehow the humans themselves seemed soft. No natural armor like her scales. No claws or fangs worth mentioning. No venom or enhanced senses. Just pink or brown skin that bruised easily and bodies that seemed fragile compared to most other species. The Galactic Council had only discovered humans a few decades ago, and they were still considered a minor species. Curious, certainly. Surprisingly adaptable, maybe. But dangerous? Not really. At least that's what everyone said. Curious spotted Jake moving through the crowd below. He was average height for a human, maybe 6 feet tall. Brown hair, casual clothing that helped him blend in. He moved easily through the market, stopping occasionally to look at vendor stalls. He seemed relaxed, unaware that one of the galaxy's top hunters was watching his every move. She zoomed in on his face. He looked young, maybe 30 in human years. There was nothing remarkable about him. Nothing that screamed dangerous criminal. He looked like any other human tourist exploring the station. Curious felt her mouth curve into a smile, her fangs showing slightly. This would be over soon. She had captured prey far more dangerous than this. Warriors from species bred for combat. Pirates with decades of experience. Political fugitives with entire organizations protecting them. One lone human would be nothing. She began calculating her approach. The market would be too public. Too many witnesses, too many variables. Better to wait until he moved to a more isolated section of the station. Humans needed to eat regularly and sleep every day. She would wait for one of those vulnerable moments. Jake stopped at a food vendor selling some kind of grilled meat. He ordered something, paid with credits, and took his food. Then he started walking toward the eastern corridor, away from the main crowds. Perfect. Curious moved silently along the upper platform, keeping pace with him. Her species had evolved for stealth. Her footsteps made no sound. Her breathing was controlled and quiet. She was a shadow, a ghost, an invisible death following just out of sight. Jake turned down a narrower corridor. Fewer people here. Better lighting but more hiding spots. Curious descended to his level, staying about 50 meters behind. Her hand rested on the grip of her pulse weapon. She wouldn't need it. The weapon was set to stun anyway. The council wanted him alive. She closed the distance. 40 meters. 30. 20. And then something strange happened. Jake stopped walking. Just stopped, right in the middle of the corridor. He didn't look around frantically. Didn't start running. He just stood there, completely still, holding his food. Curious froze. Had he heard something? Impossible. She made no sound. Had he seen her reflection somewhere? No, the angles were wrong. Maybe it was just coincidence. Humans were known for being randomly unpredictable. She waited, pressed against the wall in a shadowed alcove. Her visor tracked his heat signature. His heart rate was steady. Not elevated. He wasn't afraid or even alert. He was just standing there. Then Jake did something that made Curious's blood run cold. He turned around. Slowly, casually, like he had all the time in the world. His eyes swept the corridor, moving across the exact spot where she was hiding. And then they stopped. Locked directly onto her position. He shouldn't have been able to see her. The shadows were too deep. Her camouflage tech was active. Even most enhanced species couldn't spot her when she didn't want to be seen. But Jake was looking right at her. And he was smiling. It was a small smile. Not threatening. Almost friendly. Like he'd just spotted an old acquaintance across the street. He raised his free hand in a small wave. Then he did something that no prey had ever done in Curios's entire hunting career. He winked. One deliberate, playful wink. Like this was all a game. Like being hunted by one of the galaxy's most dangerous predators was amusing to him. Then he turned back around and continued walking, still eating his food, completely relaxed. Curious stood frozen in her hiding spot for a long moment. Her hearts were beating faster than they should. A strange feeling crept through her body. Something she hadn't felt in years. Something that apex predators rarely experienced. Uncertainty. The next 3 days became the most frustrating period of Curios's entire career. She had hunted across dozens of worlds. She had tracked targets through asteroid fields, toxic swamps, and war zones. She had never, not once, lost prey for more than a few hours. Jake Foster was different. On the first day after their encounter in the corridor, she followed him to the residential sector. He entered a small apartment building, 3rd floor. She waited outside, monitoring all exits. 6 hours later, her scanner showed the apartment was empty. He hadn't left through any door or window. The ventilation shafts were too small for a human. It was impossible, yet he was gone. She found him 12 hours later in a completely different section of the station, sitting in a cafe, drinking something hot and reading a data tablet. When she approached, he looked up, smiled at her, finished his drink and walked into a crowd. By the time she pushed through the people, he had disappeared again. The second day was worse. She tracked him to the docking bay levels where cargo ships loaded and unloaded. She had him trapped between 2 locked doors with only one way out. She waited at the exit, weapon ready. An hour passed. 2 hours. When she finally checked, the corridor was empty. The locks hadn't been opened. The security footage showed nothing. It was like he had simply stopped existing. She found him that evening at a viewing platform overlooking the station's central core. He was standing alone, watching ships come and go through the massive docking ports. She approached carefully this time, keeping her distance, trying to understand how he kept escaping. Jake turned before she got close. "Beautiful view, isn't it?" he said casually. "I never get tired of watching ships. Each one has a story. People leaving, people arriving, people running, people chasing." "This ends now," Curious said, raising her weapon. "Does it?" Jake asked. He didn't look scared. Didn't even look concerned. He just looked curious. She fired. The stun bolt should have hit him center mass. Instead, it hit the wall behind where he'd been standing. He'd moved before she pulled the trigger. Not after. Before. Like he knew exactly when she would fire. By the 3rd day, Curious was beginning to doubt herself. She was sleeping less, eating less, spending every moment trying to predict his movements. She studied human behavior files from the Council database. Most of it was useless. Humans were described as social, emotional, and somewhat unpredictable. Nothing she read explained how Jake kept vanishing. On the 4th day, everything changed. Curious returned to her ship to resupply and analyze her tracking data. The ship was a small personal vessel, well-armed and equipped with the best stealth technology her people could create. It was parked in a private docking bay that required her biometric signature to access. When she approached the airlock, she noticed something immediately. There was a small package sitting on the ground right in front of the door. A simple brown box, maybe 30 centimeters on each side. Her instinct screamed danger. Could be a bomb. Could be a trap. She scanned it with her visor. No explosives. No biological weapons. No energy signatures. Just a box with something inside. She picked it up carefully and brought it into the ship. Her hands were steady as she opened it, but her hearts were beating faster than normal. Inside was a data chip and a piece of actual paper. Real paper, the kind humans used to use before everything went digital. There was writing on it. Handwritten. The letters were neat and precise. The note said, "You're pretty good. But you've been hunting animals. I'm human. We do this differently. J." Curious stared at the words for a long moment. Then she inserted the data chip into her ship's computer. The screen filled with video footage. Security camera angles from all over the station. But these weren't random clips. Every single one showed her. Curious watching Jake from the upper platform. Curious hiding in shadows. Curious waiting outside the apartment building. Curious positioned at the docking bay exit. The footage was from cameras she'd never noticed. Angles she hadn't accounted for. Some of the clips were from positions that shouldn't have had cameras at all. He'd been watching her the entire time. While she hunted him, he'd been studying her. Learning her patterns. Documenting her movements. Her blood ran cold. This wasn't how it worked. Predators hunted prey. Prey ran and hid and hoped to survive. Prey didn't watch back. Prey didn't study the hunter. Prey didn't leave packages at your ship. Curious felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Real, genuine fear. She spent the rest of the day searching for him with renewed intensity. This had become personal. He'd invaded her space, violated her sanctuary, proven that she wasn't as invisible as she thought. She found him that evening in an abandoned cargo bay on the lower levels. The area was scheduled for maintenance, so it was empty. Just rows of storage containers and dim lighting. Jake was standing in the center of the bay, arms crossed, leaning against a container. He looked completely relaxed, like he was waiting for a friend to arrive. Ready to come quietly? Curious growled, circling him carefully. Her weapon was drawn, set to maximum stun. She wasn't taking chances anymore. Jake's smile widened. Not even close, he said calmly. Your move, Huntress. She fired immediately. 3 shots in rapid succession, covering different angles in case he tried to dodge. The lights cut out. Complete darkness filled the cargo bay. Curious's visor switched to thermal imaging automatically, but in that brief second of transition, she lost sight of him. When the lights flickered back on 3 seconds later, the bay was empty. Jake was gone. Again. But this time he'd left something behind. Written in the dust on top of a nearby container were 2 words, "Getting closer." Curious screamed in frustration, the sound echoing through the empty bay. The gifts started appearing the next morning. Curious woke in her quarters aboard the ship and went through her usual routine. Weapons check, security scan, review overnight sensor logs. Everything was normal until she opened her food storage unit. Sitting on the top shelf, perfectly arranged, was a meal she recognized immediately. Krell root stew with spiced grain cakes. It was a traditional dish from her homeworld, something she hadn't eaten since leaving the Valkyrie system months ago. The ingredients weren't available on Hyperion 7. She checked when she first arrived. Her hands shook slightly as she picked up the container. It was still warm. Fresh. Someone had prepared this within the last hour and placed it in her ship while she slept. The ship's security logs showed nothing. No breaches. No unauthorized entry. No alerts of any kind. Jake had been inside her ship. Inside her home. While she was sleeping just meters away. Curious didn't eat the food. She couldn't. The thought of consuming something he'd touched made her feel violated in a way she couldn't quite explain. Instead, she spent 3 hours checking every centimeter of the ship for tracking devices, cameras, or traps. She found nothing. That afternoon, she went to the station's training facility. The Valkyrie needed regular physical conditioning to maintain their edge. She'd reserved a private room as always. It was a secure space with reinforced walls and a lock that required her biometric signature. She went through her combat drills. Blade work, hand-to-hand techniques, agility courses. 2 hours of intense training that left her breathing hard but feeling more centered. More in control. When she returned to the locker area, she found a data chip sitting on top of her belongings. The footage showed her. Training. In this room. From earlier today. And yesterday. And the day before that. Every private session she'd done since arriving at the station. The camera angles shifted and moved, showing her from perspectives that shouldn't exist in this sealed room. He'd been watching her at her most focused, most vulnerable moments. Studying how she moved, how she fought, how she prepared. Curious destroyed the data chip immediately, smashing it against the floor until it was nothing but fragments. Then she sat down heavily on the bench, trying to steady her breathing. This wasn't hunting anymore. This was something else entirely. The next violation came that evening. Curious kept her personal quarters minimal. She didn't believe in attachments or sentimentality. But there was one thing she carried with her always. A single flower, preserved in stasis from her family's garden back home. It was the last gift her mother had given her before she left to become a hunter. She kept it in a small protective case in her personal chest, locked and secured. When she opened the chest that night, the case was sitting on top of her other belongings instead of at the bottom where she'd placed it. And next to it was a fresh flower. The same species. The same deep purple color. Impossible to find anywhere except on her homeworld, which was 3 months of travel from here. Curious's hands trembled as she picked up the fresh flower. It was real. Not a replica or a hologram. Real petals, real scent, real life. He hadn't just entered her ship. He'd gone through her private things. Found the one item that meant something to her emotionally. And somehow, impossibly, acquired a matching flower to leave beside it. She sat on her bed for a long time, holding both flowers, feeling something crack inside her chest. For the first time in her adult life, Curious was genuinely afraid. Not afraid of death. She'd faced that many times and never flinched. This was different. This was the fear of being known, being understood, being predicted. Jake had gotten inside her head in a way no one ever had before. She started changing her patterns. Sleeping at different times. Eating at random intervals. Taking routes through the station that made no logical sense. She kept her weapons within arm's reach at all times. When she slept, it was light and brief, waking at the smallest sound. She checked corners constantly now. Scanned crowds for his face. Jumped at shadows that might be him watching. The hunter had become the hunted and she hated how it felt. 3 days passed without any sign of him. No gifts. No footage. No sightings. The absence was somehow worse than his presence. At least when he left things she knew where he'd been. Now she had no idea. He could be anywhere. Watching from anywhere. On the 4th day, Kirzis went to the station's main observation deck. It was a public space with massive windows overlooking the star field beyond. She needed to clear her head, to think, to figure out her next move. The deck was mostly empty this time of day. Just a few travelers looking at the stars and one maintenance worker checking the window seals. And Jake, standing alone near the far window. Kirzis's entire body tensed. Her hand went to her weapon automatically. But she didn't draw it. Something held her back. Jake turned slowly, like he'd known she was there all along. He probably had. "What are you doing to me?" Kirzis hissed, walking toward him. Her voice was raw, almost desperate. She hated how weak it sounded. Jake didn't run. Didn't flinch. He just stood there, watching her approach with those calm human eyes. "Showing you what humans do best," he said quietly. His voice was gentle, not mocking. "We don't just survive predators, Kirzis. We outlast them. Outthink them." He took a step closer. Then another. Kirzis could strike him down right now. She was faster, stronger, better armed. Every instinct screamed at her to attack. But she didn't move. Jake reached out slowly, giving her plenty of time to react. His hand came up to her face and his fingers gently touched her cheek. The touch was soft. Warm. Non-threatening. Kirzis froze completely. Every combat reflex she trained for years told her to grab his arm, break his wrist, incapacitate the threat. But her body wouldn't obey. She just stood there, feeling his hand against her scaled skin. "See you soon," Jake whispered. Then he dropped his hand and walked past her, heading toward the exit. Kirzis stood motionless, staring at the stars through the window. She heard his footsteps fade away. Heard the door open and close. She could follow him. Should follow him. That's what hunters did. But she didn't move. Couldn't move. Because somewhere in the last few days something fundamental had shifted. She wasn't hunting Jake anymore. He was hunting her. And somehow, impossibly, she didn't want him to stop. Kirzis spent the next 2 days doing something she'd never done before. Instead of hunting her target, she started investigating him. She accessed the Galactic Council's public records first. The official report said Jake Foster had stolen a data core containing sensitive diplomatic information. The crime had allegedly occurred 3 months ago on a council station near the Outer Rim. Security footage showed someone matching Jake's description entering a restricted area. The case seemed straightforward. But Kirzis had learned something important over the past week. Nothing about Jake Foster was straightforward. She dug deeper, calling in favors from information brokers she'd worked with before. She found inconsistencies almost immediately. The security footage had been edited. Not obviously, but the timestamps had small gaps. A few seconds here, a few there. Someone had cut pieces out. She tracked down the original investigating officer. He'd been reassigned to a remote outpost 2 weeks after filing the report. When she contacted him, he seemed nervous, unwilling to talk. But eventually he admitted something didn't feel right about the case. He'd wanted to investigate further, but his superiors had shut him down. Kirzis found more evidence over the next day. Financial records that didn't match up. Witness statements that contradicted each other. And most interesting, the council member who'd pushed hardest for Jake's arrest was someone named Dreth, a high-ranking official with connections to several trading corporations. She started investigating Dreth next. Within hours, she found a pattern. Over the past 2 years, several people who'd worked in Dreth's office had been accused of crimes and disappeared. The charges were always different. Theft, assault, espionage. But the pattern was the same. They worked for Dreth, then suddenly they were criminals on the run. The data core Jake supposedly stole? It had contained financial audits of council members. Dreth's audits specifically. Audits that would have shown he'd been embezzling funds and taking bribes from corporations for years. Jake hadn't stolen anything. He tried to expose corruption, and Dreth had framed him for it. Kyrus sat in her ship, staring at all the evidence she'd gathered, feeling something unfamiliar settle in her chest. Shame. She'd been so focused on the hunt, so confident in her abilities, that she'd never questioned whether her target deserved to be hunted. She found Jake the next evening in an abandoned docking bay on the station's lower levels. The same bay where she'd lost him days earlier. He was sitting on a storage container working on a data tablet. He looked up when she entered but didn't seem surprised. "You knew I'd figure it out," Kyrus said, walking toward him slowly. Her weapon stayed holstered this time. Jake set down the tablet and nodded. "Hoped you would," he replied. "I needed someone skilled enough to help me prove it. Someone who could dig deep enough to find the truth." "Why not just tell me?" Kyrus asked. "Why all the games? The gifts? The surveillance? Would you have believed me?" Jake asked. "If I'd walked up to you on day one and said I was innocent, that a council member framed me, would you have listened? Or would you have just collected your bounty?" Kyrus opened her mouth to answer, then closed it. She knew the truth. She would have stunned him and dragged him to the nearest council facility without a second thought. "You had to see I wasn't normal prey," Jake continued. "Had to realize something was wrong. Had to get curious enough to look beyond the official story." "You manipulated me," Kyrus said, but there was no anger in her voice. Just understanding. "I gave you the tools," Jake corrected. "You chose to use them. You chose to investigate. That's all you." Before Kyrus could respond, alarms blared throughout the docking bay. Red emergency lights started flashing. Jake was on his feet instantly, his relaxed posture gone. "Dreth knows," he said quickly. "Must have tracking on the files you accessed." The bay doors at the far end burst open. 6 armed figures in tactical gear rushed in, weapons raised. They wore the insignia of council security, but Kyrus recognized mercenary movements when she saw them. These were Dreth's personal enforcers. "Both of you on the ground now," the lead enforcer shouted. Kyrus's combat instincts kicked in immediately. She assessed threats, calculated angles, measured distances. 6 opponents with energy weapons. Poor spacing. Overconfident. She glanced at Jake. He was looking at her, waiting. Not asking for help. Just waiting to see what she'd choose. Kyrus made her choice. She moved first, drawing her weapon and firing in one smooth motion. The lead enforcer went down, stunned. Jake moved simultaneously, rolling behind a container as return fire lit up the space where he'd been standing. The fight was chaotic and brutal. Kyrus moved with the lethal grace her species was known for. Fast, powerful strikes. Precise shots. She was born for this. But Jake was something else entirely. He didn't have her strength or speed. His movements weren't as fluid or powerful. But he was efficient in a way that was almost frightening. Every action had purpose. No wasted movement. No hesitation. He used the environment perfectly, turning every container and corner into an advantage. One enforcer came at him with a blade. Jake didn't try to overpower him. He redirected the attack, used the opponent's momentum against him, and left him unconscious on the ground in under 3 seconds. Kyrus watched between her own fights and understood something new about humans. They weren't physically superior to most species. But they were persistent. Adaptable. They studied their enemies and found weaknesses. They didn't rely on natural advantages because they didn't have any. They created advantages. The fight lasted maybe 2 minutes. When it ended, all 6 enforcers were down. None dead, just unconscious or too injured to continue. Kyrus stood among the bodies, breathing hard. Jake was barely winded. "We need to move," he said, already gathering his equipment. "More will come. But now we have witnesses. Evidence. Dreth just made a huge mistake attacking us." Kyrus nodded, but she was still processing what she'd just seen. She'd fought alongside Jake. Trusted him at her back. And together they'd won. "Thank you," Jake said quietly, meeting her eyes. "For choosing to help." Kyrus looked at this human who'd turned her entire world upside down in less than 2 weeks. This human who'd outsmarted her, outmaneuvered her, and then trusted her with the truth. "Don't thank me yet," she said. "We still have to take down a council member." Jake grinned. "Now you're thinking like a human." The evidence they gathered was overwhelming. Security footage from the docking bay showed Dreth's enforcers attacking without provocation. The financial records Kyrus had uncovered traced millions of credits flowing into Dreth's personal accounts from corporations he was supposed to be regulating. Testimony from the original investigating officer confirmed the pressure to close Jake's case quickly without proper investigation. Within 48 hours, Dreth was arrested. The council moved fast when one of their own was exposed. They couldn't afford the scandal of a corrupt member, so they threw everything at the investigation. More evidence surfaced. Other victims came forward. People Dreth had silenced or framed over the years. Jake was cleared of all charges. His record was wiped clean. The council even issued a formal apology, which apparently was rare enough that it made news across several systems. The council representative who delivered Jake's clearance also spoke with Curious. She was offered compensation for her time and troubles. More than that, she was offered a formal position as a council investigator. Her skills were exceptional, they said. Her ability to uncover the truth about Dreth showed she was more than just a hunter. Curious declined. She didn't want credits or positions or official recognition. She wanted something else, though she wasn't quite sure what yet. 3 days after Dretha's arrest, Curious received a transmission from her homeworld. The Valkyrie clan leaders had heard about what happened. About how she'd been manipulated by a corrupt council member. About how she'd fought alongside a human to expose the truth. They were sending a ship to retrieve her. To bring her home. Her honor had been tested, they said, but she had proven herself worthy. She would return as a hero. The ship arrived the next morning. It docked in one of Hyperion 7's premium bays, a sleek vessel bearing the silver and black colors of the Valkyrie clans. Curious was expected to board within the hour. She stood on the main platform overlooking the docking area, watching the ship through the massive windows. Behind her, footsteps approached. She knew without looking that it was Jake. "Big ship," he said, coming to stand beside her. "Looks important." "It is," Curious replied. "My people sent it. They want me to come home." Jake nodded slowly. He didn't say anything else. Didn't try to convince her to stay or go. He just stood there, hands in his pockets, looking at the ship with her. Curious's communication device activated. The holographic image of her clan leader appeared, a older Valkyrie with darker scales and ceremonial markings. "Huntress Curious," the leader's voice was formal, commanding. "Your ship awaits. Return home. Your honor is restored. The clan celebrates your victory over corruption." Curious looked at the hologram, then at Jake, then back at the hologram. "I appreciate the honor," she said carefully. "But I'm not ready to return yet." The clan leader's eyes narrowed slightly. "You have completed your contract. The human is cleared. There is no reason to remain in that place. Your duty is to your people." "My duty," Curious said slowly, "is to finish what I started." "You refuse your people?" The clan leader's tone had shifted from formal to cold. "You refuse the clan's summons?" Curious felt Jake's hand slip into hers. His skin was warm against her scales. Steady. Not possessive or demanding. Just there. Present. Offering support without asking for anything in return. She looked down at their joined hands, then back up at the hologram. "I'm not refusing," Curious said, her voice stronger now. "I'm choosing. There's a difference." "Choosing what? To remain with a human? They are prey species. Wait. You are Valkyrie. You are a hunter." "Yes, I am," Curious agreed. "And I've learned something these past weeks. Humans don't dominate their pack the way we do. They don't use strength or fear or intimidation. They earn loyalty. They earn trust. They prove themselves through actions, not words." She squeezed Jake's hand slightly. "This human tracked me without moving," she continued. "He hunted me without touching me. He got inside my head, predicted my movements, understood me better than I understood myself. And then he trusted me with the truth. Trusted me to choose the right thing even when I'd been sent to capture him." The clan leader was silent for a long moment. "You speak of him as if he has claimed you." "He has," Curious said simply. "Not through combat or force. Through patience. Through understanding. Through showing me what I could be beyond just a hunter following orders." "This is unacceptable," the clan leader said. "You would abandon your people for a human?" "I'm not abandoning anyone," Curious replied. "I'm choosing my own path. Something humans understand better than we do. They don't live by rigid hierarchies and ancient traditions. They adapt. They change. They become whatever they need to be." She looked at Jake, who was watching her with those calm, patient eyes. He still hadn't said a word. Hadn't tried to influence her decision. He was letting her choose, just like he'd let her choose to investigate the truth about him. "So, partner?" Jake asked quietly, just loud enough for her to hear. Curious felt something settle in her chest. A certainty she'd never felt before. She turned back to the hologram. "I am his huntress now," she said clearly. "Not because he forced me. Not because he defeated me. Because he showed me a different way to live. And I choose to walk that path with him. The clan leader's expression was unreadable. The clan will not forget this choice, Curious. I hope not, she replied. Maybe someday you'll understand it. She closed the communication channel before the clan leader could respond. For a moment, neither she nor Jake moved. They just stood there, hands linked, watching the Valkyrie ship through the window. You didn't have to do that, Jake said softly. Your people, your home, that's important. It is, Curious agreed. But so is this. So are you. You showed me that strength isn't just about hunting and capturing. It's about choosing your own path, making your own decisions. Humans understand that. Jake smiled, that same calm smile he'd given her in the corridor weeks ago. So what now? Now. Curious looked out at the station, at the thousands of beings moving through their lives, at the ships coming and going. Now we figure it out together. You still need someone to watch your back. Dreth had allies. They won't be happy about his arrest. True, Jake said. And I guess you need someone to keep you from getting too comfortable. Can't have a hunter losing her edge. Curious laughed, a sound that surprised her. She couldn't remember the last time she'd laughed. They walked away from the viewing platform together, leaving the Valkyrie ship behind. Curious didn't look back. She didn't need to. She'd spent her whole life hunting prey, following orders, living by the rules of her people. Now she was choosing something different. Not because a human had dominated her or defeated her, but because he'd shown her there was more to existence than just the hunt. They walked through the station, predator and prey, hunter and hunted, neither and both at the same time. Just two beings who'd found something unexpected in each other. Just partners. Just his Huntress. And she wouldn't have it any other way.